Hey, how's y'all doing, everybody? Again, this is your host, Mr. Blows Your Minds, and welcome to Black Minds News Report. Today's date is August the 20th, 2020. I want to say what's good to my day ones, my subscribers, and my new ones. What's good to everybody? Passers by, you happen to pass by. This is the most hated show in the black corner of the YouTube. We always got a grand opening. Go down the aisle, see some things. You happen to see something make you feel some kind of way. Remember what the motto of my show is: the truth don't need no partner. Today's show is going to be based on the simple fact that I've seen these articles that came up with two brothers who seem to have the Christian forgiving spirit that we seem to always bestow upon those who seem to not do us right, who are the ones who introduced that doctrine to us, and we've taken it and played the game better than they ever thought that it should have been played. Let me say that again. You know, somebody has given you an indoctrination that you take wholeheartedly and play it better than they do, because originally it was from you. But this rehashed version, when certain situations happen to us, we have no problem going into our deck of cards and pulling out this card to play when we want to show some kind of allegiance, some loyalty, some I don't have hatred, or I am not racist because this is who I am. Now, each person is entitled to their own opinions, their way of life, and how they see things. So I'm not here to judge the brothers. What I'm here to look at the scenario, the situation, and ask the question for those of us who are looking at what done took place. If you were in the situation that they were in, after some of the stories I will relate to you as to what took place to them, and the individual who did this to them, would your summation of everything, of the sum total of your experience, of the duration of what you knew you were innocent from the beginning, will this be how you would profess, not for just yourself, but to the country and others like self-minded like yourself, that, well, I'm going to hold the doctrine to the T. And some people will be in agreement and some people will be in disagreement. Well, you're probably talking about, well, what are you talking about, brother? What are you talking about? Well, there's two individuals, and I'm going to introduce you to both of these brothers, let you hear from their own words. And then we'll go into it, right? One brother name is Jamal Trulove, right? And let me go ahead and get into this, show y'all this, and we'll be back right after that. We ready to get this going? Let's get into it. Be right back.
So look, I know everybody want to hear my opinion about Kamala Harris being picked as VP, and really it's simple. My reservations with her is not bigger than what the selection is. We got to get Donald Trump and his whole administration out of office. And we have our two candidates right now, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as VP. And we got to get behind it. You know, I know some people might think, you know, that and it is hard, right? Because things been said, people look at it like this, like that. Hey, you seen during the primaries, all of these candidates going after each other, and you stood with who you wanted to go with, who you wanted to go with, who you wanted to go with. At the end of the day, you can't be a sore loser. Your candidate didn't make it there. My candidate didn't make it there. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to get behind the candidate that is in front of us, and that's Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So if you wanted my answer and you wanted, you know, if you thought you was going to get something else, hey, you must not know me enough. At the end of the day, I'm going to say it again. At the end of the day, I'm not going to fall into that that Trump trick bag, and I suggest you don't either. Y'all make sure, man, y'all go and rock the vote for Biden and for Kamala. Peace.
All right, we are black, right? So that was that brother there, Jamal Trulove, posted a video a couple days ago, and he seemed to be endorsing, looks like, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, right? Now, again, we all are entitled, because we are nothing but a sum total of all our life experiences. Do you agree or do you disagree? So we may have situations that are similar to each other, but if we don't walk through the same shoes and have the same experiences and background, maybe you might sound like this brother here, right? But we're going to window shop here based on our understanding of whatever circumstance and experience we have. But collectively as BADOS, which is Black American Descendants of Slaves, we have a common bond. And in this day and age, especially when we're talking about the restoration and repairing, which we consider reparations, of a nation who has been systematically destroyed. They say there is no systematic racism, but there's plenty of evidence that will show on the history that there was systematically, legislatively, that has always kept us in a certain position. And it's funny that the two people that you're supporting and their background and their history and what took place and what happened to you, seems a little ironic that you, after what you had endured through them, and not say per se both of them, but both of them are birds of the feather flocking together. They have a commonality amongst just those two. And in one aspect, as Kamala, with you have a personal interaction with her. And so before I get into that, I want to also introduce you to the other brother and let you hear him, and then I will get into the topic at hand. So keep that in mind with that brother just there. That was Jamal Trulove, right? And this brother here name is Caramad Conley. Let me say that again. Caramad Conley. Now I want you to hear this brother, and then we'll get into this particular topic. So check this out and be right back.
Saying is, I told you so. Pretty much, like, this took this long. I've been saying this for 20 years. So at that point, you don't, I mean, at least that's been my experience. Like, it wasn't overwhelming because I knew it wasn't me. I knew the person they was describing. I just knew, like, I've been telling y'all this already. So now you finally see. I don't have no qualms about, her, being a vice president. I mean, I think that I believe she'll be great in that position, because I think, again, local politics are not global politics. It's a whole different beast. So, what she did locally to move here into this position and into this position, like, I just think she was bred that way, like by that culture, that political culture. Like, that's what they do. None of their hands are clean. But I also believe that, in second chances, I believe people who make bold statements, especially when they do it publicly, they have a greater risk of being exposed. Like, I love when politicians speak bold and put that out there, because now we really can hold them to account. So she's done that, but I don't have a problem with her being vice president or the president. If she had been nominated as the choice, I just think that it's not the same. You know, what she did at this point is different from this point and different from this point. But personally, like my case wasn't necessarily Jamal Trulove's case, you know. It wasn't that deep, even though she had, I believe the moves that she did, like not wanting to release me when clearly it was shown that I was, you know, done wrong. I think it was just an opportune. Again, she was moving into a new position. You know, she didn't want to ruffle any whatever feathers. But again, the newly elected DA, that's the first line of business. He came right in and, nope, we're not going to play these games. This is dismissed, period. And I totally respected him for that. Like, I would hope that she's learned from those mistakes. I couldn't ask for more than that from her. Like, because you did ruin a life, you know, or a few lives, or a lot of lives. You've done that. But I think most of those politicians do that, you know, by the way that they vote on particular things. Like, I just think none of their hands are clean. I can only hope that she, you know, internalizes, you know, the things that she's done wrong. I believe she's an opportunist, like the rest of them. Like they're part. Like, I remember Barack Obama when he was first elected president, and I remember him specifically saying, he talked about in his speech, his State of the Union, he talked about the culture of Washington and how it was going to be difficult to change it, and how the real struggle is going to be to challenge the culture. And you can't blame the politicians for, I mean, until they become part of that culture and they perpetuate that culture, that's when you lay blame on them. But until then, they're going into a culture that they didn't create, that they don't control, just like those who go into prison system. I remember reading, this wise man once said, you don't judge the prisons by the inmates, you judge the inmates by the prison, because men are brutalized, you know, by their environments. So, like, even me going into prison, I didn't create that violent culture. I didn't create it. But how I conducted myself while I was in there determines everything you need to know about my position in the prison. So I didn't become part of the bullshit. I didn't you know, become institutionalized. I used my time wisely as best as I could, and I made it out, and I'm doing great things now.
Right, so we are black, right? So those are two brothers there. One name is Jamal Trulove, which was the original one you've seen. And the second one is Caramad Conley, right? Now, Jamal Trulove, he was in San Francisco. He's framed by the police back in 2007 for the murder of an acquaintance, is what they say. He got convicted in 2010, sentenced to 50 years to life, in prison for 6 years. Then what ended up happening was a California appeal court overturned his conviction in 2014. Then by 2015, he was acquitted. 2016, he sued the city of San Francisco. In April 2018, there was a jury found the two officers who was accused of framing him guilty of fabricating evidence, failing to disclose exculpatory evidence. 2019, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors voted to approve a settlement of $13.1 million. Okay? And that was the first brother that you heard that talked about that his reservations, regardless of how he's feeling, that his situation is bigger than his reservations, right? Now, that's a person, when we look at situations when you become mature, and sometimes as men, sometimes there's a disagreement when we have with each other. And depending on the two individuals, it could be two immature individuals, or there could be a mature individual and an immature individual, or there could be two gentlemen, right? Where you can handle this by word of mouth. And so in the situation, what we see that after what all he endured and was given a 50-year sentence to life, to come to later to find out to be overturned, and the person who had their hands personally involved in this was the person who is now running for vice president of the United States, known as Kamala Harris. And so they say what's in the dark shall come to the light. A lot of times that people are in positions. And I'll talk about something, the fact that Mr. Conley said, as into people coming into certain situations. We'll just say like when he talked about Barack Obama. Now remember, right now I'm talking about Jamal Trulove, but I'm going to take the term that was used by that brother when he talked about how the culture in politics, right? That there's a certain already dynamic and atmosphere for those who may be picked by the community and the constituents to represent them in politics. But let's say the design, the foundation, and the legislation prior to your arrival has always been set up in a way that is geared towards the origin of the nation. Now, on this show, we talked about how the Constitution would go back to the Dred Scott case. And I also show some things that a present day politician has said that situation that you think has been eradicated based on changing by certain little amendments. But he also said that decision is still the law of the land. And so to give a back door to a person because you say that when they come into a situation that based on the way it's built, designed, and structured, you as an individual cannot come in and change the whole structure on just you by yourself. And we should understand that. And I understand that is a mature way to look at a situation. But let's say, hypothetically, and there's many of our brothers and sisters who've been in these situations where they don't get the outcome that you got, right? Let's think about that. There's a lot of our brothers and sisters who have gone through the same situation that you go through or gone through, who don't get awarded anything and they don't get exonerated, correct? And so here you who have gone through that situation, but have found a sweet spot. You've found a escape for those who, under the circumstances of your own, if they could have gotten away what they did with you, they would have gotten away with you. But sometimes when we look at, I ain't gonna say sometimes, majority of the times when we look at a lot of the cases that then took place from Trayvon Martin all the way to where we are today, there was a pattern, if we was paying attention, that you seen that the exchange for the life that was taken was to get the settlement, right? Where you have some cities whose budgets are just really been destroyed is because of all the settlements that have been paid as the consolation prize of killing your loved one. When they found, now again, a lot of times people on the opposition bus will say that you guys are bickering, complaining, and bitching and moaning and using the race card. But again, I will state and always keep stating that we as black people, black American descendants of slaves, you never see us protesting, demanding justice when people who are outrightly just guilty. You don't see that by us. When we see the situation, and due to the all-seeing eye, which I say is the cameras these days, when those things take us and teleport us back to the day and we get to see for our own, to make our own assumptions and come with our own determination of how we view it based on what's been reported, and the clips that they want to show. And once we make that determination, somehow we Voltron together and say justice needs to be served. And we have seen many stories as of lately that have taken place. So as Jamal Trulove has gone through this situation, given the sentence of 50 years to life, to come to find out he didn't do none of that, now it's one thing to be a person who's talking about a situation that doesn't happen, like say if it's a police officer. They done retired, or they're still in the force. And I guess the only way you could do is going through the civil lawsuit, and that makes some kind of, compensation for your discomfort, as they would put it, right? But when you see that this whole culture that he talks about is built on merit, in order for you to rise in the system, that monster got to eat. Let me say that again. In order for that system that thrives on a merit, in order for you to elevate from the position as you came in as a foot soldier to rise to the rank and file, that monster got to eat. And so it has been deemed, if again, of the video that you done seen when I talked about how those of us who come from the cloth and cut from the cloth of BADOS and was put in a de facto statelessness and deemed to be considered what they would say a consumer nation, that the system, the monster, needs to feed off you to have its profits beyond which it may evaluate amongst its own, but is more profit on the people who are been conditioned, who have been seasoned, who've been programmed, and who have acquiesced into becoming the cannon fodder so that we may have bigger profits because we've, skinny the opportunities for just particular people. So a lot of them depend upon the services, right? The opportunities that we provide. So we have a remote control mechanisms to keep you in somewhat, even though we may not be right in the face of you. And so if Jamal Trulove is cut from that and know that not just the person that is the vice president, but the person who's running with him, right? Also in his tenure as being, before he was a vice president, signed crime bills that he was very fond of. Now, you may not have went to jail based on the stuff that he was writing, but again, I don't want to talk too much more that with Caramad Conley, the things that he had said when he talked about, being opportunists. And again, remember, this monster got to eat. So this monster eats on black flesh in more ways than one, right? Many ways that this monster eats on black flesh. And so sometimes you can watch movies where you see a monster grab somebody which you thought that was going to be his or her demise, somehow gets out of that and survives to the end of the movie and somehow gets a chance, an opportunity to kill the monster. But when we talk about in reality, right, the movies that we see, not the way that we want to depict it and say that we all could play the parts, because the way that Hollywood has always played, there's a running joke, and still kind of is, that whenever you've seen a black person in particular movie, especially certain genres of movie, especially when you've seen a monster movie, you knew that the black person probably much going to be the first one killed. If he was even in a military movie, he's always was going to be the first one killed, right? And matter of fact, when I think about that, when I think about some of the movies that I done seen, you ever remember see that movie Marked for Death? when it was Screwface, right? It was twin brother, and they thought that he had some kind of magical power. But look how they wrote the script, how to kill Screwface when Steven Seagal, right? Now, all they was doing was pretty much using, you know, kind of voodoo, Ogun, you know, using, they was using that. It was a lot of that ritual they put on them, right? They was putting that in the movie. But old Steven Seagal, you know, it's going to squeeze your head and make juice come out and throw you down the elevator shaft and it go through your back, right? You just look at the depictions of how, when we were in these movies, how they would just kill us off. Matter of fact, rest in peace to Jim Kelly. But I thought Jim Kelly might have been probably one of the worst kills I've seen in cinema. Other than the fact of watching some of the ancestral movies that they depicted what they were doing to us. You know, go back to Enter the Dragon and seeing Jim Kelly and seeing how that, one, you wrote the script where you got him being whooped by Mr. Han, who got one hand. Two, after he whooped him, he hangs him over a tub or bath of what was considered acid. Three, you released him to disintegrate him till there would be nothing to even find of Jim Kelly. Who wrote that script, right? So the same thing here. This monster that eats on black flesh, when you get a chance to get away from it, then it's your opportunity to do damage to it. Isn't it the opportune time for you to now go ahead and get your pound of flesh? Let me say that again. Based on the things I just said and how that monster likes to eat, and rarely ever do many people escape that monster. So when you look at the movies, the hero's always a white person. Matter of fact, even got down to the subliminals of a black hat and a white hat in a movie determine who was the good guy and the bad guy, right? So rarely have you ever seen a movie where the black hat guy was the good guy. Always was the white hat guy, right? So here you become the black hat who got the opportunity to be representation of the white hat. And you know what you do? You did what was in your heart that you felt that was needed to be done. But questions have to be asked. Why would a person, after going through that with an individual who is partnered up with another individual who actually programmed this monster that likes to eat black flesh? This monster loves to eat black flesh. And these two individuals had no problem with feeding the monster black flesh. At whose peril? So, he says that for some odd reason, he's going to get behind Joe Biden and Kamala Harris due to the simple fact that whoever his pick was, who we did not mention, they did not. And so he feels the need to get you to get out here because he believed Donald Trump to be the worst thing that could ever happen. Now, again, I'm not here to advocate for Donald Trump. I'm not here to advocate for Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. None of that. I'm only advocating here for we as BADOS, as a black news outlet that talks from a black perspective and commentary. Whether all EEOC for everybody, for your listening enjoyment to participate and, you know, agree to disagree. But the point is, when you put this in the scale of the two versus the one, show me on the other side of the one that everybody is rah bish can boom, gotta go. Because again, if we talk about the culture and the design and the foundation of what has been created and designed to do, they ain't been no one, even when they put one that looked like you, it was the same programming, it was the same design, and nothing had changed. But now it's like, if we don't, everything, you know what I'm saying? They say the sky is falling, the sky is falling. They said that originally back going to 2006, made so many people go into despair there's probably many people who probably even off themselves. I said it, off themselves. And here we are, 4 years later, still enduring, even though there's some new things on the way. And so here's a person who the system, the monster had, tried to chew you to death. And here are the two culprits who programmed that monster, had its input, its personal input to have it to ravage you. They said that if you ain't got nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. Why people who seem in these situations seem to be advocating on behalf? So we have to be questioning a lot of this. I remember one time again, earlier in the beginning of this 2020 campaign season, they had, what's her name, Cardi B. And Cardi B was out here talking about how she was looking like wait a minute, why is all these actors and stuff are coming and advocating for these politicians? Are they getting paid? Do anybody remember that? Now all of a sudden now, we see you put out WAP. WAP, right? Tore up that damn house song though. But anyway, right? WAP. And now you get to talk to the president, where the president ain't even doing no real talking for himself, but they're going to advocate and use you because it seems like you're trying to do, like sometimes when you're driving in the car and they got them construction signs and they got a detour man, we got a signs that go around this. Well, it seems like they got her to use to try to get around and not deal with the core foundation of those who are out here talking on behalf of exchange for some tangibles for something specifically for BADOS. So it's looked like they looking at every avenue to find somebody who seemed to be like, why are you advocating when you should be like, okay, explain to me why I should support you and what you're going to give me in exchange. Promise me something. Promises you can keep. Huh? That kind of shit, right? So anyway, so he decided to say that he's advocating for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Now, is this kind of like in his way that he think that if Kamala Harris wouldn't have done what she did to him and the turmoil and, the whole obstacle of his life we're going through from back in 2017 to being awarded 11 years later, to find out that the police officers, again, that is something that black men been saying, but they kept saying, oh, all you guys are innocent. You always say, everybody in jail said they're innocent. And here it is now, we're trying to see more and more of these cases where they come to find out that they've been planting, using people to lie, right? And you went through this personally. Yeah, Jamal Trulove, I ain't got no problem with you, bro. You're going to say and do what you got to do. I'm just saying, as another brother, and others of us who might be looking at this, kind of the smell test don't smell too right. Smell a little off, like what's really going on here? But that's for you. But we're trying to wonder, like, wait a minute. When it comes on black, how come we don't have this kind of, like, kitten gloves, as they say, when it was dealing with our own people in certain situations? No, it's death to the end. But when other people's, we seem to find this soft place, and I think that's kind of the psychological game that everybody be able to use on us because they know that's part of the repertoire in us, that somehow we're going to find a way to be forgiven by you. And so because that you have this element of black BADOS who are saying we're not going to forgive, we're going to hold you accountable, they're not liking that, right? So that's what I'm saying about going around, is because if you had to deal with that, then you're going to have to say something in exchange for what you want. And we're not going with the old quid pro quo, a nice, pastor speaking and you coming to the church, we get a chicken dinner, and then on November, we're going to vote for you. We said, nah, no more days like that, right? So you're going to get pieces that would be damaging to the person who you picked, knowing that those are going to be the talking points that we're going to be talking about. And so ironically, an individual who has personally gone through what you have put on him and didn't allow him to be exonerated and made him go through the whole process. Now, based on getting $13.1 million, he believes that if she didn't have did it, he wouldn't be the person he is today. Maybe that's his way of congratulating. Maybe a sick way of doing it, but it's his way, right? So we just have to say, okay, what is this really about? Right? Like, okay, man, okay. And so he wants to get behind Kamala Harris. He wants to get Trump out. And he said at the end of the day, that Trump is the trick bag, right? That he's the trick bag. And I'm like, again, I've had conversation with family members of my own, and we got into these discussions. And when I laid that out to them, they themselves couldn't even explain why, other than the simple fact of, the so-called being vice president to Obama, right? And when he's talking about, being a Democrat, and then, going back to Lyndon B. Johnson, talking about, I'm going to have them voting Democrats for the next, you know what I'm saying? All those things have been implemented to keep you there, instead of talking about, then want to say, well, what party? I said, well, no. We done got rid of that. We done threw that playbook out. It's now about, as playing politics, what can you do for me? What can you do for us? Right? But nobody wants us talking like that. So what you're doing now is trying to get pieces that should have some kind of animosity now coming out and speaking on behalf and supporting you. So that says that there's something amongst us. Again, we're still working out. You don't blame those for being sick. You understand why they might be sick. But we have to still advocate on behalf of the part when they wounded, like in war. We got to go grab them, get them, resuscitate them, bandage them up, heal them, and then cure them. You get what I'm saying? And so that was that brother there saying what he said. Now, this brother here, right? This brother here, the Caramad Conley, right? You heard the video and the things that he talked about, right? And so he used that term when he said opportunists, that he says that, that's who politicians are. And so when you think about opportunists, you're talking about opportune and opportunism, and you're talking about opportunity, right? You're just saying that basically these people who, taking advantage of situations, right? The expediency of situations, striking while the iron is hot situation, getting it while the getting is good. The terms like that. Making hay while the sun shines. That's old school right there. Making hay when the sun shines, right? Right? Taking advantage of the opportunity to trying to do that at night when there ain't nothing to be able to see. That's kind of what the reference to that is, right? The favorable time, a good moment, the perfect occasion, the right season, right? Right set of circumstances. So when somebody has an opportunity to do what's right, but take the other road because it's beneficial for them, then what kind of character do they have? Are this the type of person you want in the position? Because it seemed to me that you can have this questionable character about the things that you're doing. Again, am I sitting here saying that people can't change? Am I saying people can't be forgiven? According to the book, that's what it say. But it seems to be a different standard or another section of that book that is a black and white situation. Seems like black folks do more of the forgiving while white folks don't give up that kind of forgiveness. Right? And so we see that this brother here said the things that he was talking about. As I say, you heard in that video, right? And, as I said, he dubbed her as an opportunist, right? And he also kind of reflected on the fact that she ruined, he say, few lives during her time as a prosecutor, right? Now, you know that Kamala Harris was a district attorney between 2003 and 2010. before becoming California's Attorney General. Now, her record in both roles, based on the fact that now she's running for vice president, is now coming under scrutiny, and her trying to partner up with Joe Biden for the White House. She's known for taking her tough stance on crime. Now, again, it's not that we as BADOS, black people in general, and people in general in the United States aren't against crime. But they do say that crime has a lot to do with poverty, and poverty has a lot to do with economics. And so the lack thereof breeds certain kind of conditions. And so if I have lack thereof opportunity, I guess then in order, he said, man don't work, man don't eat. Well, if a man don't work, a man got to find a way to eat, right? And so when you have a population that has, when you come to statistics about unemployment, and it has higher that they won't even report the actual numbers, then you can see why certain areas are more, what they say, crime ridden. And so Kamala Harris, who had oversaw a number of prosecutions that ended in wrong convictions, like we just talked about the Jamal Trulove. Again, remember he was sent back to prison in 2007, convicted of murder of his friend, right? And even though there was no physical evidence linking him to the crime. And so when you go back and you look at her as a attorney general, she is one who helped author the laws that a lot of people had talked about. When we talk about parents going to jail because children were truant from school. And one that got on the social media rounds was that Lorraine Cuevas, right? Anybody remember her, Lorraine Cuevas? Right? Where she ended up losing her custody to her kids, but they gave it to her mother. So it's kind of like, said, well, we did it, but we kept it in the family, right? But why put somebody through that situation when it's not really merited? Yeah, school is part of the essential to keep the brainwashing programming system go. But when you poor and, whether people don't have money for, keeping clothes clean, sometimes when you in situations of being poor and your budget of your money has to be kind of divvy up as to what bills come prior, what bills are necessity that have to be paid, another, we're going to let it roll another month. Those who come from where I'm come from, you know what I'm talking about. And so sometimes, maybe light bill due, ain't got enough left to do laundry. So, depending on how bad the clothes is, you ain't got detergent, you ain't got soap bar. And, a lot of circumstances come when you under these conditions. For a lot of people hearing this is like nonsense and bull. But if you ain't cut from where I'm cutting, you ain't coming from where I'm coming from, then you probably wouldn't know all that, right? Because seeing today is a lot of bougie people who don't, you don't know about all that. But anyway, so here was, she was the author of that particular story ended up getting on to the social media, and now it's back in review, right? And so we see when, let's say Miss Harris, was Kamala Harris, when she left and took up her position as the California Attorney General, the brother that you see on your screen, right? It was the new DA coming in that was going to be the one to end up trying to undo what they had done. Now, what I want to do is I want to give you the background to his whole story about what took place, and then you heard out of his own mouth of some of the things that I'll talk about as I go on. And again, he believes she's an opportunist and think that she's an opportunist that he said to the highest degree, like the rest of them. Well, again, if these jobs are merit-based jobs, it's kind of like you got to be like outdoing the next. It's like anything in competition. In order for you to be, let's say, if there's 350 jobs in the NBA, You got to be 350, you know what I'm saying, ready. 351 can't get in. 355 can't get in. You got to be 350 on down to number 1, right? And so it's the same thing as being a politician. The only difference is those who have recently, especially when we look now that we don't have as many, you know, the black politicians, they done died off. And then when you look at their records, what's done change or is changing is the fact that we're sitting here now want to hold accountable for those that we end up voting as constituents of the community that goes to represent. And then you ain't going to sit there 30, 40 years. And then when we look back, all you did is a memorial to Martin Luther King. And then we talk about how great a person is. That's not going to happen anymore. And so because of this fervency that we're starting to hold people's feet to the fire, it's not going with the quid pro quo, the easy, we're going to count this a lot. And we just got to work on keep giving the things that should have been going to them to other people's, and so that they support them. So it's like running the game. So now black folks are putting that monkey wrench in the game, and a lot of people are not liking it, right? They're not liking this shit at all. They say, oh, okay, what the hell is this shit about, right? What the niggas are trying to do? And so in order to advance in this situation, there's going to be a lot of competitions to outdo. And you got to show your keep. And so one way is when you're a district attorney and when you're a police officer and all that, it's about arrests. It's about convictions, right? You want to be a judge. You want to say what kind of lawyer, what kind of convictions, and to be a, you know, all that comes into play. But no one wants to believe that there's somehow there can be some fraud and there can be some malfeasance and all that intertwined in these people who have elevated themselves. And as I go on, I'm going to give you the background to this brother here and what happened with him. And so they do all kind of things that's going to advance their career. Now, this brother here said that, as you heard in the video, he said he would hope that she would learn from those mistakes. Now, that's what they say to us, right? You know, get your lawyer. All right, stay yourself out of trouble. What do you mean? Shit, I got a case. I ain't trying to, you know what I'm saying? But meaning, you know that these predators roam these streets and these, whoop, whoop, is the sound of police, right? That's the sound of the beast, right? And so when you hear that sound, and even though you ain't done nothing, you could be driving in your car, lights come on, right? Your whole situation changes. Your whole life can change, right? Based on the individual who you encounter. He may have some personal things going on. He could have ambitions that he tried to obtain to get out from being a flat foot, beat walking, ticket writing, to having a stripe on there so that he can sit down and have coffee and donuts, right? So, you know, so when you have a merit like that, and a lot of people are trying to aspire and inspire to be, then there's going to be a lot of situations that are created because certain people want to move up. And so when we don't take the magnifying glass and look at all that, guess who becomes, you know, the revolving recidivism going in and out. And a lot of these things don't come to light until now because of black media and social media. These stories can now be brought to light. Before they would just be buried. We can look at like in Chicago when they had the John Bird situation where a lot of brothers was being taken and tortured and given and putting in, you know, life sentence and stuff like that. It took years for that to all come out. And even after the fact, they still didn't want to admit that that had been done. Yeah, you get what I'm saying? So it's crazy, right? But again, here's another brother who been eaten by the monster, had bid, and yet, knowing that what he knows, he's going to turn the other cheek and say what he says, right? But this brother here that you heard, this brother has some intelligence about himself. And he kind of breaks down from his point of view of how he's looking at things, right? He said that he thinks that most politicians do that by the way that they vote, which is true. When they get in there, and again, the way that politics works is You help me to get what I want, and then I help you to get what you want. But look at the dynamics between when we talk about race. And I know a lot of people say, well, race, it's not real. It's a construct. But okay, you can say what you want. But when you look at the demographics of politicians by race, and look who probably representing you versus everybody else, don't you see why that you don't get a lot of the cut of the pie? Because you got to get the majority of them to agree to whatever you're trying to get. But if they're looking at the cut that you want, it's like it's like a little secret thing that amongst some people, I'm not saying everybody, like when you're eating pizza, people, everybody getting their grub in, people looking at the pieces, right? Yeah, someone who's sitting there done measured up and like the piece he want, and then you grab a piece and he try to grab, you know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. See, you might be trying to grab a piece that's the piece they want, or they feel like that's not the piece you should be getting. And so based on their demographics and their numbers, they prohibit you from getting. And so they work around with others, and somehow you just be there 20, 30 years and you can't get nothing past it because the demographics are not in your favor. Right? So what you end up doing, you start being in cahoots and passing shit or, saying yay to shit because you were trying to negotiate. And it's a lot of times you helping people getting theirs, but you ain't getting nothing done. So they say, when you look at your record as a politician, they realize you was just in there collecting a check. And so he believes that none of their hands are clean, but he hoped that she realizes the thing she's done was wrong. I think that's one of the hangups that, we as black people, and I'm not saying that's a wrong thing. I think it is the thing that make us, why we were considered the moral compass to this country, is because of how we look at right and wrong. But have you ever noticed that everybody outside of us, and I'm not going to say the totality of all of us, because again, our circumstances and have breeded through the conditions and the mold and designs of this country have made certain people where they become numb and that it don't pay to be right and wrong. But there's a nice portion of our people who believe in being right, trying to uphold, law, authority, and so forth. But circumstances can sometimes make a good person do some things out of necessity and survival. And so to say that a politician that realizes, that she's done wrong, it's all about, as you say, opportunity. And if this person is about seeking power, then as they say in war, casualties of war are just part of war. And if you get steamrolled based on the simple fact of me to obtain true benefit and better my people, my family, all I can do is say I'm sorry. But that's just the nastiness game of politics. Now, this brother is one of 9 children. According to how they deemed his neighborhood in Bayview, they called it a poor district in San Francisco. Said it was notorious for drugs and gangs. Now, what area that black folks live in when they're not in the so-called middle class and upper class, that the areas we come from are not considered to be drug infested and gang related, everything, right? And so he himself disputes the fact that it's been deemed that. Now, again, see, when we live in these environments that are considered natural for us, other people who only get their information about those communities through the news, through magazines and newspaper articles, here we is living in them and say, well, wait a minute. I live in there. I don't know what you mean by a hotbed of gang warfare, right? He said most of the people that I knew were normal. Now, does normal have different levels to it? Is there one generalized when you say normal fits every situation? Especially as we as BADOS in this land? I'm pretty sure you're going to say not, right? But according to this brother, and many of us will also attest that, yes, we come out of certain neighborhoods, but all those situations that be happening, a lot of that is cause and effects and other things that contribute to it. It's not just that's just happening, but they don't get into the crux of what's causing that, right? And so a lot of us living there, a lot of us, we get up out of there and so forth. And this brother say, hey man, I know people who own homes, who are running their own businesses. So this stigmatization that you label don't quite fit according to the way y'all saying it, right? He even talked about how when he was younger, he wanted to be a police officer, you know, right, when he was young. And, you know, think about that. I mean, you know, going back in the time, that was some of the things that seemed fireman, policeman, doctor, you know, lawyer. Those are some of the common things that when you were a kid, you start to want to aspire to. But his story that he talked about that I had read, he talked about his first actual experience came as a teenager, right? Now, many of us, right? Depending on the area where you come from, you coming out of the, you know, the inner cities and so forth, you know, your encounter can come before being a teenager. It just depends on the type of cops. Like, again, you got some cops who, again, they don't want to be the flatfoot. They don't want to be the motherfucking patrol car, man. They don't want, you know what I'm saying, cross. They want to get the stripes. They want to make some more money, right? And so sometimes you had those who, you know, grabbing up the kids and, you know, so forth and that. You know, that's how you got Audi homes, right? Right? And that kind of stuff, right? So anyway, so he talking about how his experience came, you know, him and a couple of his friends, they were just on their way going to the store. And he said that an undercover police officer was trying to sell one of his friends some drugs. Huh? Yes, he said this is his first encounter that he recalls of his ordeal. Now, many of you can relate to this, right? We all have our own stories, but we all got our war scars and stories. But his was the fact that him and his buddies, him and his boys, they on their way to the store and the dudes try to sell them. He said now, at this particular time, none of us was on that. But you know the way that they done depict our communities and areas, we all was doing crack. We all is robbing and stealing. We all in gangs, right? We know better than that. But you know the story that they write, because they got to, again, they write to validate when they come and doing what they doing so that they sell it to the rest of their people, right? And they do that, right? We know they do that. So somehow he says that his friend had assaulted the guy because, you know, they don't give all the details as to what happened, but he said he assaulted the guy. All of a sudden, all these police came out of everywhere, huh? So it was kind of like a sting operation. They were setting up, trying to sell some drugs. Here they is, teenagers, they rejecting it. And in that, you know, altercation of that interaction, then all of a sudden you seen everybody who was coming out, you know, like, like ready now, come out, here I come, right? Hide and go seek. Then all of a sudden everybody running, you know what I'm saying? They out there. So now what you get is that put him in the car. He's seeing all this stuff going on. They drag him up out the car. It's about 8 of them. Lay him out on the ground. And he said one of the cops, you know, any of y'all who ever tried out for Pee Wee League football? Because I don't think they did it in high school. And maybe in college they might. And I know in the pros they were used to do it. They took that out. Remember they used to have a tire drill. Put the tires and you would run your feet through there from left and right, you know, as fast as you could. Now, remember he said there's 8 of them. They got 4 of them on the ground, laid out. A cop run thinking he on the damn tire drill. Run on their damn heads, right? Stepping on everybody. And so he said this was the first time I ever had to deal with the cops. And based on that situation there, he knew, he said, damn, is this what cops do? I don't want to be no damn cop. And so after that situation, the only other situation he said ever happened to him in life is the situation that I'm going to give you the background to on that. Right? And so that's when he was shorty teenager. Then in April of 1989, there was a drive-by shooting where 2 men, I think one name was Roshan Johnson, the other one was Charles Hughes, and said injured and 12 others because somebody came by on a drive-by. This is 89, you know what I'm saying? Boys in the hood, you know how, you know what I'm saying, all that about Cali, right? But this San Francisco, right? But, you know, still Cali, right? So anyway, so this situation happened. One of the individuals who got killed, Conley, is his friend. which was, I think his name was Charles Hughes was his friend. So according to the situation when he was at home with his father that night, but accordingly, he had been at a barbecue earlier with the men who had been involved in supposedly that they talk about later. Now, he was supposed to be at the barbecue, but later on he was at home with his dad. Now, again, you know, I'm just going with what was said, right? And so he said shortly after the killing, what ended up happening was that the San Francisco police officers, one named Napoleon Hendricks and another name was Prentice Earl Sanders, they would come, you know, and as history, as talking about, as I was saying earlier about merit and moving up, the same two officers, this Napoleon Hendricks and this Prentice Earl Sanders, they became the city's first African-American police chief. But these were the police officers that was just patrolmen at this time who came to his house. Now, ain't that something? The case that he's dealing with, they later going to become chief. Did it have anything to do with his case? Or is that part of the building blocks that got him or got them there? Same thing when you go back to Christopher Dorner and those of the Rodney King, he relayed in that manifesto that I had read that those who did what they did to Rodney King, right? Those that was out there beating them, a lot of them got elevated and became police chiefs out there, right? Got merited for that. So, you know, one hand washes the other, right? And so, according to what the story had talked about, they said that there was one of the cats' name was Clifford Polk. He supposedly gave his name to the police officers, right? And it was unbeknownst to him, meaning the brother you see on your screen there, right? Mr. Conley there. Later on, it was found out that this Clifford Polk, he had turned police informant in exchange for cash and for keeping his own drug-related misdemeanors out of court. You know how it is. You know how that game go. Everybody say nobody. They say you say what they say, snitches get stitches. But everybody know in that street game that everybody telling because everybody ain't trying to do that real damn time, right? So what happened? You know they do. They come with a deal for you. You know what I'm saying? Give me a name. So guess what? Either he got beef with you, don't feel some kind of way about you, or this is an opportunity way to get you out the way. Threw your name in the hat, right? And so he said after talking to them, he knew, based on what he knew the truth was, he was like, okay, I talked to them. It was all good. You know what I'm saying? I knew I had my story, had my backup. It was all good. 3 years later, they came to arrest and charge him with murder and attempt murder. 3 years later, it came somehow, it worked back to him, right? And so they said the whole case of this prosecution was rested on, again, Polk's testimony, right? And it was later revealed that the entirety of what Polk said was fabricated, that ended up getting him to be convicted, right? And the judge that was handling this case handed down 12 life sentences to him. Let me say that again. The judge that was handling his case gave him 12 life sentences. And here he is, innocent as he is, knowing his situation, going through trial, all the way up until the verdict. He still believed he would be found innocent. He was sitting there thinking that he would be innocent, right? He went and told his attorney, I'm going home, right? Right? He ended up testifying on the stand. After he said what he said, he felt like, I'm going home. And guess what? He didn't go home. According to what he said, he spoke to the judge at his trial, you know, and after everything that had took place, he asked the judge and said all he was expecting from the beginning was the fairness and impartiality of this trial, right? That was it. That's all he was looking. He said, if they go by the way that they say that the system goes, I'm going home. So he didn't get that from the jury, right? The jury didn't see it that way. He appealing to the judge to be fair and impartial, right? He went back there after they found him. He said he was trying to appeal. Hey, you know, I ain't do this. And what did the judge give him? 12 life sentences. Huh? So he ended up going to spend time in the San Francisco County Jail. He said one time in his stint while he was in there was the one cellmate that was next door to him. It was called Richard Ramirez, which known was a Night Stalker. Then they moved him to San Quentin prison on a conviction. He was moved around from prison to prison. He was always kept in a maximum security wing. He said one of the worst ones that he could recall was the Pelican Bay, right? Pelican Bay State Prison, considered the most infamous prison in the state of California. What? Right? And he said there was a lot of foul stuff just with the inmates, but he said the guards. He didn't expect inmates. He expected the inmates to be there, but the guards, he was like, you know what I'm saying, it was just ridiculous. Now, again, man, I'm giving you the background of this brother's story because there's a reason to this, right? Right? Then he talks about how that a lot of the guards were in cahoots with the white supremacists, the Mexican mafias. They would take people cases files and give them to the inmates and have them targeted and killed. He said that stuff was going on all the time. He believes, he said, you know, based on the climate around the Pelican Bay, it's always raining 9 months out of the year. It's always kept a dark cloud over that prison because he believed that it was because of a lot of death that was happening up in there, right? So how he kept his sanity is he was doing his work, right? He would get the work, details. And so based on the prison rate, 8 cents an hour, right? And staying focused on his family is what kept him maintaining and fighting this. Say it was about 2003 that, it was, his case came up and it was because of this innocent project. They ended up contacting him in jail, right? So what his father did is turned over his case files and the attorneys quickly linked his case to, it was a case, I think the name was John Tennyson. Now, John Tennyson had been framed by a murder by the same detectives who had convicted him. Now, remember earlier I told you them same two end up becoming police chief, right? And so the evidence box that the Innocent Project had picked up in the Tennyson case where the files were connected to him. So somehow there was a correlation between Tennyson and him. He didn't know this, right? And his original lawyer didn't know none of this, right? And so it was in, again, because his original attorney didn't know nothing about it. It never included such as the witness receipts. They removed that out of his case. Now, whether his attorney knew that, I don't know if he had a pro bono or did he have, did he have, right? You know what I'm talking about. He had one of them lawyers, right? And so in those receipts, which proved conclusively that Polk had been paid for his service. Now, again, remember that was a cat that ratted and snitched and said he was there to get less of his trial, became an informant. But in this document that was tied to this Tennyson case, notes was written saying that they were paying this cat. So what happened is the Innocent Project, they interviewed Polk. And what Polk do? He confessed. Kind of like when you talk about that story that happened in New York, right? Remember when they talk about Donald Trump and, the one with Ava DuVernay and, Central Park 5. And he was in prison. He was like, damn, boy, you still in here? Man, you shouldn't be in here. I did that, right? Confess, right? So Polk had confessed it and said he made up the allegations that sent Conley to prison and admitted that it was a fear of being put away himself that driven him to doing it, right? He didn't want to go to jail. So in consolation, he gave you up. Ain't that something? A friend, huh? That's a real friend, right? So in 2010, like Conley case had went back to the court. In December 10, they vacated the case, dismissed it without prejudice by the judge. Okay? And because it was dismissed without prejudice, it opened a way for him to have what? A retrial. Now guess who the DA? Kamala Harris. But guess what? Kamala on her way out. But she was the one to help you get in. She on her way out. So what did she do? She sent it back to court, right? She sent his case back to court, So he ended up had to go back to the San Francisco County Jail to wait for a new trial. Right? Now I'm giving you the background. I want you to have this background because I want you to understand what you heard that brother say based on what he done went through, right? And so when he finally was brought back to the county, and he knew that it was going to at least be 6 months that he was going to have to do that sitting there waiting, right? And so he know they're doing all sorts of other stuff because they're going to be playing games. So he was preparing himself mentally, physically, and spiritually to be dealing with all this. And so what he said he wasn't prepared for, that he didn't know that Kamala was going out of the office and that the new DA was coming in, right? Now remember, she was the original DA that ended up, allowing this case to go forward so that he could be prosecuted, right? But unbeknownst to him, again, who is your lawyer? How come your lawyer ain't keeping you informed? So I have to say, if it wasn't for that Project Innocent, then the people that, whether you were paying them or was it just a state-funded one, yeah, you know what it is, right? And so when this new DA came into the office, according to them, they said the first order of the business was to dismiss his case outright. So then, is it the fact that you want to put this dismissal on the new DNA and keep the conviction on Kamala Harris? So even though she done determined to find out through after the evidence had been found that you were innocent, but not on her record, you was not going to be, right? So he was in January 2011, 9 years from the day that they're going to release him, right? So in 2012, he sued San Francisco for a wrongful conviction, and they rewarded him $3.5 million payout. Can you imagine that? He got $3.5 million, but the other brother got how much? $13.1 million, right? Now some people say, well, they get it because he was light skinned. Oh no. But anyway, situations are different. But they do have a connected thing, which they both seem to be advocating for. And so it looks like he confesses and says that he bears no grudges towards the officers who framed him for murder. He don't blame Polk for tricking and snitching. He said that he was a victim of the cops just like him. So he don't blame and hold no grudges, right? It's maturity, man. That's all the things he done been through, right? But he also said he forgive Harris, Kamala Harris. He says her record as a prosecutor shouldn't ruin her chances in the battle for vice president. Huh? Is that institutionalism? Is that what that is? Or that's somebody who, just really believe what he's saying? Or is this something good for the article? He then got awarded, got his money, maybe, somehow you can tell yourself, okay, the ordeal I got in the way I'm in now, the money I done got, okay, everything good. Again, I'm not hating none of these brothers. They did what they had to do. I just think it's ironic that they sitting here advocating for somebody who you have personally had to endure what they could have did right outright, and they chose not to do it. And then to line herself up with a person, when you talk about 89, that crime bill was going on at the time when you was a teenager, when the cops were trying to put drugs on you. So just imagine if they could have put them drug charges on you in 89, you're not even going to be able to deal with the case that you're going to deal with later in 2007. You'd have been already up. Get what I'm saying? So here's the opportunity to get back. Not because you're being vindictive, not because you have some, no, it's because you say you hope she learned a lesson. Can we afford that somebody who grouping together? Again, I'm not advocating for nay or a. I'm just saying, if people like this to get where they going, and now they're going to obtain some more power, and the next step from vice president is president, right? The next step is that. So, do you stop the monster before it get big? It's kind of like how sometimes you look at some of the shorties out here that be out there, 12, 13-year-old, see him and looking like he going to be a man one day. And the way he kind of got his demeanor, his swag, you kind of like, hey, he going to be a problem later on. So it's better to get him now, right? And that's what they're saying, called super predators, right? Remember that term they was using on the super predators. So it's kind of like, hey, man, we got to look at this stuff, man. When we get these opportunities to get a chance to shoot back at a mug, it's not us being vindictive. It's about justice. And sometimes situations are presented to you and you got to go ahead and take that opportunity while you got it. Even though whatever the ordeal that you had to survive to go through, there's a lot of situations that could have turned for the worse. They're pretty sure there's people that lost their lives and didn't get a chance to speak to based on being wrongfully convicted. You know what I mean? And so he just believed her record as a DA shouldn't necessarily have a bearing on her career as a senator because it's a different set of rules. See? She's an opportunist like the rest of the politicians. What she did locally, I think she was bred in that way by the political culture. You know what I'm saying? That's his set. That's what he believes. Who are we to say he's right or wrong? All we can do is evaluate if we was in that situation, how we would deal with it, right? And it's just kind of like, I think people use that because that is a gear we got. I'm not saying all of us, but many of us. And I think a lot of them know they do the things that they do. And then when they finally get caught, they know that we have this in our spirit, in our soul, in our minds, that we have this forgiveness. Kind of like the same thing with those who've seen the story that I did when it called about the Botham Jean and the brother going in the courtroom, hugging the woman, talking about, well, my brother's rot. I don't want you to rot. I don't want nothing to happen bad to you. But my brother's sitting in the coffin, rotting and dead because he was in the house watching TV, ice cream, watching the game, and you claim that the door was open and all the evidence that then come back to you shows that that ain't true. So how could I sit there and talk about, can I have a hug? Can I have a hug? Yeah, you could have used that opportunity though, right? But anyway, y'all tell me what y'all think, man. I just wanted to relate this story just in case you didn't know, right? Everybody have they're entitled to their opinion about how they see things and how they do it. That's, to each his own, right? So we do this and then we're going to get up out of here. Again, this is Black Minds News, the most hated show on the black corner of the internet. Peace and love until the next show, y'all. Peace and love.